Two U.S. delivery contractors have sued Amazon, saying that the online retailer misled and underpaid them. They allege that Amazon put burdensome conditions on their contract. And bottom line, the relentless demands of Amazon have led to driver burnout and high turnover at a time when there's a shortage of workers. Sound familiar? Burnout is everywhere. Kimberly Wilson, also known as Dr. Burnout, works to support individuals and businesses in addressing burnout. And for the last 20 years, she's been specializing in bridge building and reshaping businesses into less toxic and more nurturing environments. Kimberly joins us today to discuss how to identify burnout in ourselves and those around us and how we can combat this growing issue. Kimberly, so good to speak with you. What does burnout look like 19 months into this pandemic, after the third school year to be affected is upon us, and as people start to trickle back into the office at least 2 or 3 times a week?
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. Thank you for having me on. And I think that people often confuse burnout and stress. Stress is often short term. It's sometimes used to motivate us, like when we want to get a degree or we want to do something special, like run a marathon. It's short term. Burnout is long term. It's more stressful. You have less hope and you begin to lose energy, enthusiasm, and confidence. Go ahead.
No. So that's really interesting that there's a distinction between stress and burnout. I hadn't thought of it that way. You are an organizational psychologist. What is the psychology behind burnout? Is there a body of research that tells us something about burnout that we're now starting to realize, but we kind of put on the back burner before the pandemic?
Well, yes. Actually, the research began in 1979 with Herbert Freudenberger, and now it's gone further. A lot of work with Dr. Masloch. She has burnout inventories. The research is voluminous. So there's a lot of information out there, and we just haven't tapped into it, partly because of the work ethic, the Protestant work ethic. And we need to work hard, go farther, do more, and just give it our all. So it's become a part of the American culture.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the work culture for sure. So given all of that, how do you know if you're suffering from burnout versus just experiencing stress?
So when you're experiencing stress, as I was stating before, it's short term. It's around certain events. There's a resolution to it. When you talk about burnout, it's been coming for a long time. It's characterized by exhaustion, cynicism, and inefficacy. There's actually 12 stages that Herbert Freudenberger characterized to distinguish burnout and where you're at. So it's important to catch burnout early. And often other people see it in you before you recognize it yourself.
Yeah, you answered my question there, because I was just wondering about that as well. So given all of that, I'm sure there are companies or organizations that are more familiar or experienced, at least, in dealing with burnout. Intense industries or organizations like the military, for instance, must have some practical experience here.
Absolutely, and especially healthcare, those are organizations that tend to run on burnout, especially with the pandemic. And it's important. One of the things that's important for organizations to do now is it's almost like you're going to need to date your employees. You're going to need to woo them, to talk to them, to find out how they're experiencing burnout and where changes are important to make. Because if you just begin to institute changes that you got from a company-wide survey or what you think might improve it, oftentimes they will miss the mark. So it's important to have that open line of honest communication with the staff.
I like that. You got to woo your employee. You got to look at them as almost you're dating them. So that seems to be the single most important approach that employers can take in supporting their employees who have identified that they're feeling burned out. What if you are self-employed and you're an entrepreneur? And we know that for those people who run their own business, when you don't work, you don't get paid, you don't make money. There's no HR department that can change that dynamic.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's particularly important when you're an entrepreneur. And I experienced burnout, and I had to institute my own tactics because I realized that I was working 18-hour days without a break. And so religiously identify what's important in your day. What are things that you must do and what are things that you can put off? I regularly put in a 2-hour break every day in my workday. Look at your calendar as well and see what is giving you energy and what is taking it away, and try to balance that out as much as possible so that you are giving yourself things that you enjoy more than you are taking away from yourself. So
Right.
if there are things that you can delegate or hire out, try to do that as much as possible.
Right. It's almost like if you look at an accounting book, it's a credit versus a debit there. I know you focus on women in particular, Kimberly, and very quickly here in our final minute, how do women experience burnout differently than men?
Well, women, I have a special heart for women experiencing burnout. Overwhelmingly, a lot of women come to me, and we've taken on the burden as nurturers, and we tend to put ourselves last. So we are caring for those at work. We are caring for our parents. We are caring for family members, and especially for high achieving women. And then when you add on top of that, the intersectionality of race, gender, religion,
Yes.
that deepens the burnout. And I just had one yesterday come to me talking about the challenges she had coming back to the office after everything that's happening and hearing the political views of everyone and how that affects them. So women have historically placed others first. So they tend to really embrace burnout as a way of life rather than something that you can choose not to do.
And that's the important thing. It's something you can choose not to do. Kimberly, thank you so much. Kimberly Wilson, also better known as Dr. Burnout. Really appreciate the tips there. All right, let's get you to some other COVID